I commend Hawaii Community College Palamanui for launching a new Associate of Science in Natural Science degree this fall. The state is committed to finding new solutions to the problems faced by rapidly changing climate. That's why I launched a Sustainable Hawaii initiative that will double local food production, build stronger invasive species policy, infrastructure and capacity, effectively manage 30% of watersheds and nearshore marine areas, and complete the transfer to clean, renewable energy in the electricity sector by 2045. I encourage the students of this new program to use their 21st century skills and innovative projects to help us meet these goals. Mahalo to everyone gathered today at Palamanui campus to celebrate Earth Day. Your efforts help protect our environment and contribute to a healthy, sustainable future. With warmest regards, David Ige, Governor, State of Hawaii. Mahalo, enjoy the rest of your day.
So I have a proclamation from Mayor Kim. Whereas International Earth Day every year provides a special time to bring people together in appreciation of our home, the earth, and instills a yearning for a healthy and sustainable community. And whereas through volunteer activities, members of our community can join together to build the earth in harmony with nature in the quest to build a better and healthier world. And whereas every individual has a role to play in ensuring that we pass on to our children and grandchildren a world that is in better shape than how we found it. And whereas on Earth Day, we should accept our individual responsibility to care for the world we live in and make our best efforts to build a safer, more stable, and more sustainable world. Now therefore, I, Harry Kim, Mayor of the County of Hawaii, do proclaim April 22nd, 2017 as Earth Day in the County of Hawaii and call upon all citizens to participate in activities and programs that protect our environment and contribute to a healthy, sustainable future. And it's signed, Mayor Harry Kim.
And now I'd like to bring up Karen Eoff and Miley David. Prior to being elected, both Karen and Miley were land use planning community advocates focusing on protection of cultural and natural resources. Notably, Karen and Miley were personally involved and worked on 2 landmark Supreme Court cases regarding Native Hawaiian gathering rights and protection of our public trust resources, including a law requiring cultural impact statements for land use approvals. Karen Eoff is council member, District 8. She's been re-elected to her 3rd term, and she serves as the vice chair of the Committee on Planning, vice chair of the Committee on Finance, and vice chair on the Committee of Public Safety and Mass Transit. Miley David was re-elected as District 6 council member for 2016 to 18, and is the chair of the Committee on Finance and the chair on the Committee of Human Services and Social Services, vice chair, Public Works, Parks and Recreation. Thank you, ladies, for
Great, thank you. Karen and I today our presentation is going to be a little bit different in recognition and celebration of Earth Day. I think in our role as community advocates or activists for many, many years, we have celebrated Earth Day from a different perspective and to where we are here today as lawmakers and policymakers. So our presentation is basically protecting our public trust resources, that the culture of Hawaii Island and its native people are intricately connected to water, land, and air. Our advocacy primarily focused on government agencies who render decisions that could impact these valuable resources. Our efforts affirm that constitutionally and by statute, government is mandated to determine impacts upon natural resources and native practices as part of its decision-making processes. So in pursuing these efforts, Karen, myself, Attorney Mike Matsukawa, former council members Angel Pelago and Curtis Tyler, Charles Young, Hannah Kihalani Springer, and Leimana Damate were personally involved in the 2 landmark Supreme Court victories that Sue referred to. It was the Passion Pelago versus Hawaii County Planning Commission and the Kapa'akai Oka'aina versus the State Land Use Commission.
These Supreme Court decisions upheld the rights of Native Hawaiians to access and gather, affirmed the duty of government to protect public trust resources, and declared that an agency's authority to determine impacts upon natural resources and native rights cannot be delegated to another agency. Also, as a result of these efforts, we were successful in enacting a law requiring that a cultural impact statement be prepared as part of an environmental impact statement process. Our PowerPoint today will present some historical background to illustrate the connection between Native Hawaiian culture and the environment and the existing laws to protect these valuable resources. In modern-day Hawaii, there's a critical need to address water in the areas of native water rights, conservation, watershed protection, surface runoff, non-point source pollution, and especially in understanding the hydrological cycle itself. The hydrological cycle is such that all water is connected and should be treated as one source to be protected and understood as the basis of all life. We live on an island surrounded by water and are dependent on its quality and quantity. As efforts to balance Hawaii's water uses continues and the vision of a future embracing tradition and respect for the land and the people becomes clear, it is important to understand the unique sources of law that protect our natural and cultural resources.
In the past, water, or wai, was of such importance that its usage formed the foundation for Hawaiian law. Kanawai, the Hawaiian word for law, originally referred to regulations concerning water. Inextricably connected to everything else, water could not be separated from air, land, and most importantly, from taro or kalo. The Hawaiian word waiwai means wealth and prosperity. Article 11, Section 1 of Hawaii's Constitution proclaims that all public natural resources are held in trust by the state for the benefit of the people. And Article 11, Section 7 of the Hawaii's Constitution specifically references water and includes the directive to protect, control, and regulate the use of Hawaii's water resources for the benefit of its people. The management and protection of Hawaii's unique cultural and natural resources requires an approach that is rooted in the traditional cultural practices of Hawaii's first people. The Ahupua'a system. The Ahupua'a system is an ancient traditional Hawaiian system that integrates the management of all resources from the mountains to the sea. We can look to the Ahupua'a model in modern-day land use and how it relates to the protection of our public trust resources. The natural organization of communities along stream systems is the foundation of the Ahupua'a. This community governance system of Kanawai was attributed specifically to shared water uses.
The public trust doctrine is an ancient and universal code dating back to the 4th century that protects man's primary relationship to the earth. It is based on the fundamental and self-evident belief that Earth's natural resources are commonly owned and are available to all for beneficial use and enjoyment. The unique potential of the public trust doctrine in Hawaii is that it is a restrictive covenant that runs with the land, irrespective of the chain of title. The public trust doctrine provides that public trust lands, water, and living resources of the state are held by the state in trust for the benefit of Native Hawaiians and the general public. The doctrine defines the obligations of public officials as trustees and the public as beneficiaries to perpetuate the use and enjoyment of trust resources for the benefit of present and future generations.
In Hawaii, the public trust doctrine has evolved into a special trust that encompasses the natural and cultural history of these unique islands. The special features of the public trust doctrine and Hawaii's constitutional mandates afford decision makers such as ourselves powerful tools. By law, traditional and customary practices of Native Hawaiians, as well as the protection of public trust resources, must be considered in all land use decision-making policies. This imperative is clear. It's also based on common law and is upheld by statutes and court mandates.
To further our efforts to uphold the judicial mandates and existing laws, Miley and I have each recently made recommendations to amend the Hawaii County General Plan. These last 2 slides are excerpts from our legislative initiatives to make sure that protection of our public trust resources are considered in all land use decision-making policies in the County of Hawaii. Sensitive resources, including native ecosystems, alkaline ponds, high-level groundwater recharge areas, historical trails, archaeological and historical sites are critical for the survival of cultural practices. Planning policies and action steps included in the general plan should reflect this philosophy.
And finally, my resolution for proposed general plan amendments are to incorporate the values and philosophy of the Ahupua'a Land Division Resources Management System into land use policies and to utilize the geographical features of the Ahupua'a land divisions and the historical use to identify important values and priorities as part of all land use decision making. That concludes our presentation. We thank you so much for having us.
It's been 47 years since the first Earth Day, and we have made tremendous progress in living sustainably on this, our only planet. So how come here, on this island, we could feed ourselves 200 years ago, but we can't do so today, despite the vast technological progress that we've made? So the Cree Indians have a proverb that I think relates to this question. Only when the last tree has died, and the last river has been poisoned, and the last fish is caught, will we realize we can't eat money. Climate change will reduce the amount of rainfall all of our islands will capture. That's because the rainfall capture zone, the band in the mountains, is actually shrinking. That's because the sea water temperatures rise, it pushes up the air, and the atmospheric conditions push down the air, the pressure systems, and that band is shrinking. And in fact, the University of Hawaii, which keeps data on this, is showing a secular decline. We've now lost almost 18% over the last 40 years. So we have reached the age of peak water. And this is a new reality that we honestly have not started to grapple with. And the implications are vast, not just to how we plan our future, but also how we live our lives today. So it begs the question, do we have enough land and water to achieve our goals in renewable energy and local food sustainably? Or are these just aspirations? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So I have good news for you, and I'm pleased to report the answer actually is yes. But we are going to have to do things very differently today than we did in the last 100 years, in the last 50 years, and even the last 20 years. So this is a study that we did for Maui, because as you know, Maui is undergoing a big land use change. The sugar company, HC&S, is about to change, is finally gone out of business of sugar, is about to shift over. And we wanted to understand whether, if you look at an island system, whether it can reach its goals by how we change over the land use. And as many as you may know, when HC&S was operating, it was mining groundwater unsustainably at the rate of about 1 billion gallons a year. And it was 25% of electricity used on Maui was actually used for either pumping, moving, irrigating, or heating up water. It was astonishing how water and energy and agriculture are really all connected. So we did a study to say, well, what if we did things differently? How would that work? What would happen? How close would we reach our goals? And this kind of shows you graphically what that looks like. And the results are pretty extraordinary. We could get 100% of the milk supply, almost 70% of the fruits and vegetables, 41% of the beef for the food supply in that county, 100% of the renewables if you start to combine the customer side technology with the utility side technology and really work those two together, 43% of the liquid fuels, all from this one repurposing. And while you're doing that, here, get this, you would use 12,000 acres of less land, you would actually use 40% less water, you would return 3 billion gallons to the streams and native uses, and you would still recharge the aquifer. That's how different things could be. That's all using existing technology, existing crops, and not only that, wait, there's more. You would actually triple the amount of revenue per 1,000 gallons that Maui was using. So Maui was actually only getting, we looked at the numbers, about $1 per 1,000 gallons. That means when they were pumping water, they might as well have been taping dollar bills to the sugarcane plants because they weren't making any money on them. This revenue, triple the revenue with this to about $3.40 per 1,000 gallons. That's a metric no one thinks about. We don't think about water as a scarce resource. We think about it as abundant, but we have to think differently and go, wow, this is scarce. How do we maximize its use while honoring all the other uses? And that's just a different way of thinking. So we didn't want local food, and one of the things that we care about, and renewable energy, to create an unexpected problem in the things we also care about, which is the I and the why. So we look at these things systematically as a Lupono to make sure the whole package works. So that's all the good news. So if that's so great, why isn't it happening? Which is what Sue asked me to talk about. So I listened to Sue. So why is local food so hard? Well, the answer is simple. It's actually marginally profitable to produce affordable local food. And as our good friend Richard Ha likes to say, a sustainable farmer is one that's in business the next year. So, right? It's true. My brother likes to say that too, and he is a sustainable farmer. He's in the business for now 30 years. So let's explore the complex reasons underlying that simple why. And it's so hard for farmers to make money, and also what we can do about it. It doesn't have to be that way. So I think many of you know, and you intuitively feel it, that our climate is actually ideal for food production. We have incredible microclimates year-round, and of course that should lower costs, and actually it does. You put the right crop in the right place, that's an important part of it. It really does thrive. We also know, because we all live here, that land, water, labor, and energy are all expensive in Hawaii, and of course that raises the cost of production, which outweighs the natural advantage. But the challenges of production can be overcome, and I'll talk to you about how to do that. But it's also what happens after we produce the fruits, vegetables, cows, and fish. It's the post-production value chain that is actually the critical link to profitability and affordability. And that chain is badly broken in all of our counties, including this one. That's the step where the farmer profit as a whole is ultimately made, because they can use the whole crop or the whole animal. They utilize all of it. And that maximizes the value production to both the people doing the value added and the farmer. And without the value added component and the processing component, the farmer has to make all this profit on basically his top quality. That raises the price, that lowers demand, and it makes it harder to both make a profit and make food affordable. And we want to feed everybody, not just some. That's an important part of how we think about this. So processing includes all the distribution and the warehouses and the value-added activities. Storage is the cold chain from harvest all the way to the table. And we don't have a cold chain in all of our districts and our counties. We're missing big chunks. It makes it harder on our farmers. You have a lot of waste. We don't have cold chain at the harbor, for crying out loud. So you have to put expensive reefers down. The one thing that's working is distribution. I've talked to young brothers, I've talked to a lot of the guys. We actually have plenty of boats, barges, fleets, and planes. That part's good. They use energy, but that part's the one part of the chain that has extra capacity. But we have to build up these other portions to make the whole thing work. So how do we get the value-added products? And I just want to show you some sort of real examples that intuitively help everyone understand what this is. So if you're a cabbage farmer, that's actually a marginally profitable business. It's about, you make like 5 or 7% on your money. You're struggling, you're working hard. If you make coleslaw or kimchi, that's like 15, 20% money. But you put them together, they're doing great. So it's that extra step. If you make beef, and I got lots of friends who are ranchers, I'll talk to you about our joint venture. You're making maybe $50, $100 a head, and you're working morning to night. Her dad was a rancher. It's hard work. But if you're able to make, teriyaki burger, hot dogs, all the other byproducts, you're able to use all the byproducts in the slaughterhouse, all of a sudden the costs go down, the profits go up. Now you're making $200-300 a head as a rancher. Your whole world is different, and it actually makes more sense to keep your calves here on the island feeding people than shipping them off to the mainland. That's the secret, it's making it better for the ranchers to keep their calves here, and we're really doing that. Ulu is a whole fruit, pretty much isn't wanted. Too much work, farmers don't get a lot of money for it, but ulu flour is coveted. Why? Because it's gluten-free and it makes a great baking product. So how do we get, and all sorts of things can come from that. So how do we get from this crop that we know grows up and down this coast for centuries into our bread? Cheese and yogurt are 3 to 5 times more valuable than the whole milk. So all of these value-added things make a huge difference, and they're all things that we want to eat. So it's combining that first step that we worked so hard with the next step to answer the question that was posed: how do we get the local food to really work here? So now for the good news and the hard work, but it's good work. What would happen if all the parts of the communities work, the agriculture community work together? Because actually the farmers and ranchers can't do it alone. So I want to share some success stories of what can happen, and also some of the things that we have to work on together, because we actually can do this and right in the midst of doing it, and that makes it very, very exciting. So we can work on systemic solutions. So it starts with making the fundamentals affordable and accessible. That's land, that's water, that's labor, that's energy, and very importantly for our farmers, especially in this county, food safety. So it's important that, they say your vote really does matter. Well, your vote really does matter, especially locally. So the support of people in the council that really are pro-ag and understand ag and have their roots in the land. We have great representatives here locally. Rep. Evans, Lowen, Cregan, Inouye, teamed with Rudderman, teamed with Gabbard over in Oahu. They have really been strong advocates, and this year they're passing a package of laws that really are going to help the local farmer and tackle a number of things. They're hopefully going to tackle, unless it goes through committee, and the governor signs it, they should be tackling money to help farmers get food safety. They're going to tackle some things on the water side. They're tackling invasive species, which of course is a problem for all of us. So that really does make a difference. And the advocacy and communicating with both our council and our local representatives can help with this. And there's things the county can do. Maui County has been starting to get really active in looking at its land and ag parks. Time for us to revisit that, because even though we had an idea 5 years ago, we didn't quite get the traction. The world's changed, and now there's a lot more of a farming base. And now I think if we revisit some of these ideas, we can get that traction again and get the farmers on the land. The second issue is really how do we either scale up or leapfrog technologically to be more price competitive. So scaling up can be either size or virtual. Working together is virtual scale up, and both things work. Leapfrog is interesting because I think that technology in agriculture has gotten a bad name because we immediately jump to GMO because they have so much press about themselves. But that's actually not where the story is happening. The real story in technology in agriculture is the application of information technology to agriculture, every single part of the value chain. And that's called precision agriculture. And that's responsible for 2/3 of the productivity improvement in this country, and quite frankly, the majority of the productivity improvement going forward. And it changes the amount of resources used in farming. It takes out the waste across the whole chain. So you use less of everything because you're monitoring. You're monitoring the whole life cycle of the plant or the animal more precisely. You're monitoring the environment more precisely. You're monitoring the water. So you're actually more sustainable because you're more aware and you're a better manager. And so that application of technology is enormous. And it also is the same thing, the RFID tags and all the food addresses food safety cheaply. It also makes sure that you keep the cold chain preserved, so we know the food was safe as it moved from here to Oahu or around the county. So there's so much that we can do to leapfrog, and there's more productive systems in terms of primary production as well. So you're going to start to see agriculture sort of take the wisdom of the old and marry it with the technology of now, but with the information side, and we're going to move that forward. It's really important that we're at this campus because that's going to attract young people in. Leilani's uncle runs the Kona Young Farmers Group. Tommy Duarte. So I went to meet the Conneaut Farmers Group, and I found a t-shirt from the farmers. And I'm happy to say that I was the youngest farmer there. And I was asking, how come I'm the youngest farmer there? And they said, we were young when we started. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but actually, it was funny, we had a great night. But actually, we need to get some young people into Conneaut Farmers. I'm not joking, we need to. So that's what, but that will attract them. When you think of a farmer with an iPad, and one of our grants, by the way, we gave iPads to every single ag extension agent in the state, because we were like, where's your iPad? Why can't you talk to the farmer and just go like that and give them the information? It's those little things of bringing all that into the farming community while still honoring all the things that Karen and Molly were talking about our history, our culture, and our knowledge. You marry those two knowledge systems, and it's a great leap forward. And then lastly, it's all about cooperation. On our island and for each island to cooperate to be competitive imports. Cooperation really means that you think about, hey, what extra stuff do I have and what could you use or what could you use? And then what extra stuff do you have and what can I use? And so we match our surpluses with your inputs, and it starts to form actually an ecosystem. It's actually a type of ecosystem, but it's very, very strong. And it really works, and it creates that community strength and also the business relationships and the trust. So that when outside forces come to try to buffet us, we're strong together, and I think cooperation is absolutely critical. So I want to share with you a couple of things that we, Ahupua'a, are doing. So I just got to give you 2 minutes on what we are, and I'll explain again at the end. So Ahupua'a is an investment initiative. We're funded by Piero Midyar, who is the billionaire behind eBay. And we are, essentially, we invest in agriculture, local food, we invest in local energy, we invest in waste, and Miley and Karen will be happy to know we added water, finally, after 7 years, to our vertical, so we're going to be starting to really work in the water side, it's all part of the system. And we try to partner with local institutions to make it happen, and we also do philanthropic work, especially farm to school and school gardens on this county is kind of the prime things that we work with a lot with Betsy at the Kahala Center. So I want to share with you a couple of projects that just shows you how much our county can do in partnership around local food. So we'll start with grass-fed beef, because I think most of you know the story when you thought about it, like, why are the ranchers moving all their cows from mainland, shipping it back in a box? It's because 20 years ago, a great guy, Robbie Hine, a good friend of mine at Parker Ranch, was like, we'll make more money that way. Actually, it was 30 years ago, and they did. But then things changed, and now they realized maybe we should try something different. So we did a joint venture with Parker Ranch, called Palamanui Cattle Company, that addressed the real issue about why grass-fed couldn't take off. We achieved scale right away. We had quality and consistency, so we could promise the retailers and the restaurants, we will deliver. We make you a promise, we will deliver. They said, okay, we'll take you up on that offer. And we delivered, and it's actually delicious. And it's now in Safeway, it's soon going to be in Costco. And more importantly, once the rest of the ranchers saw that every single county now has a major primary ranch duplicating the business model, which we're all about. We're like, that's exactly what we want. Because they're all saying, wait a second, we can make more money keeping our cows here, and we just have to have the quality, we have to have enough in that we could keep our promises, and that was always the challenge. We're so risk averse, we were like, a toe in the water, and so we never could do it. So we took the leap, and it worked. We're also, while we're on the protein side, I didn't bring a slide for this, we're also doing fish. So we are helping the Blue Ocean Mariculture guys scale up. There's also a big tilapia farm up north, which you'll hopefully be eating from soon. There's a lot of good things that are happening in fish, because of course we eat a lot of fish, and our reefs are depleted. And so we want to have sustainable aquaculture, thoughtful, that provides fish for us to eat, so we don't have, at affordable prices, we don't have to keep putting pressure on the nearshore fisheries, which are extremely depleted, to say the least. Another great project, which has been 17 years, actually 18 now in the making, is the Oceanic Institute feed mill, which is being built and going to turn on this summer. That was a project that started amazingly almost 2 decades ago. It's a joint public-private partnership between the USDA, the state of Hawaii, Department of Agriculture, Hawaii Pacific University, University of Hilo, and Ulupono, we all put in money. It's a feed mill that is specifically designed to take local feed inputs, turn them into local feeds, and then test them and apply them to all our local animals, both our cows, our poultry, our pigs, our fish, and it's going to restart the local feed industry because not all animals eat grass. Lots of animals eat other things, and we have to find out how do we feed them locally. That's why they all collapsed. They all collapsed because back, for those guys who remember, back in 08, 09, the feed prices went to heck, and all those businesses went south. And then I want to talk a little bit about Ulu, only because I hope it'll be an example of how you started from something. This is where I talk about the marrying of ancient wisdom with the future. So, I guess I may not know this, but actually it was Ulu, not Kala, that actually fed Kamehameha's armies. That was actually the bigger background to start. And that Ulu belt, we're living right here. You know, it goes all the way down from all the way past Mililiki, about Mililiki, all the way through Kona, then has another big belt all the way up in Kohala. There's a whole belt that used to be trees. All got cut down for cattle. Actually, all was trees at one point. And then another piece around Hamakui. You can see it in the old maps where all this was when they first had discovery. And obviously it grows very well here. But over time, we ended up, it's very inconvenient food in the modern age to eat because, it's sappy and takes, you got to cook it for a long time, all that stuff. So, but it's also a superfood. It's actually gluten-free, it's incredibly healthy for you. So we're investing on restarting this whole chain in combination with the Bread Food Institute, which has tirelessly kept the germplasm alive, and others. So we've invested in the first commercial Ulu farm, 25 acres up in Hamakua with Max Bowman. So the trees are in the ground. We gave the funding philanthropically to the Ulu Co-op under Dana and Noah Lincoln. That's brought all the folks together in the Ulu world as a co-op so they can have central processing. They're putting the processing plant in the old food bank building up, right up in there towards right down the highway, just down from Kanaliu, right there, that old building. So that building is now going to be used by them. We're trying to get Kamehameha Schools to give us the other building. In Hilo, so we'll have 2 poles. And what they're doing is, the Ulu produce now producing it, they're taking it, they're peeling it, steaming it, backpacking it, and now it's convenient. We're going to bring this food back because we know that to feed people you need vegetables, fruits, carbohydrates, and proteins. That's what you need. We're actually doing great on vegetables and fruits. We're actually very short on carbohydrates, but we used to be very strong. There's no reason we can't be strong again. And proteins requires either the grass or the feed requires something. The animals have to eat. So we're working on all those food groups to create so that we can show that same map for our county and say, we're already there. And I can also, I'm not going to talk about energy today, but I can tell you for sure we can hit 100% in the next 7 years if the utility gets on. So with that, let me just close by saying, as I said in the beginning, we have made a lot of progress in 47 years. And Earth Day is an important time to remember and honor all of that progress. But we know our progress is under assault. And we must come together to protect our farmers, our ranchers, and our fishermen. And the assault is not just the regime in Washington. It also can happen right here in our county. And we have to rise up and make sure we protect the people that create our food supply, our farmers, our ranchers, because if not, and this is already starting to happen on Oahu and it's happening on Kauai, they can be pushed off their land by lawyers working for the very people that bought the land to put into homes and real estate. But we're still a strong community. We still talk. We have strong leaders. That's the importance of really spending time together as a community and making sure that our bonds between agriculture and the land and the real estate and the commercial groups are still strong. We stay connected so that we don't have the problem that happened over there. So we are the Ulupono Initiative. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for the people in Hawaii. We want more local food. The governor wants to double it. We want to triple it. We're audacious. What can you say? We want to see 60% renewable energy. That includes 100% electricity. Electricity is only 1/3 of what we use, right? So that means we have to actually get on the transportation side big time. So that really brings us to the whole transportation side. We want to have 85% of our waste in landfills, and like I say, we're adding water. And we're here to help, so thank you very much. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have. The question is, given the kind of climate change, both the variability of the weather, both droughts and then superstorms, can go either way, right? How do we address that in our thinking? So it's a great question, it actually is on our minds. One of the things we've done in both the study I showed you and also in partnering with the university is so we've commissioned work where it looks at, for each county, sort of expectations of climate variance and how that might change the weather patterns, which sort of gives a sense of where drought's going to come, but also where excessive rain is going to come. So we have a better, as best as our scientists can predict, an understanding of how this climate shifts will actually affect the land use. And that tells us, for the areas that are drought, one of two things. Either, maybe not a good place to put water-intensive crops, regardless of where they are now, because like I say, the right crops in the right place make a big difference. But also it might be a place where we have to work in a public-private partnership around the water systems and make sure the water systems are rejuvenated or put the buffers in so that they can get through some of the drought periods. On the very wet periods, it's a different thing. Other allies, people like the Nature Conservancy and the Watershed Alliance Partnership, things that DLNR does, is about how do you arrest water, how do you keep water from being destructive, and how do you hold it back so it will recharge the aquifer. That's more their Kuleana, and they do a lot of work on that, and the partnerships are the way to go. But it is interesting. I mean, we take it seriously, so we act, because we're long-term investors and long-term thinkers. So we actually look at these sort of 10, 20-year models and go, and actually changed our thinking. When we first, grass-fed beef's a wonderful thing, but I'll tell you, grass, whether it's sugarcane or little grass, actually uses a lot of water. So those models helped us say, even though the ranches happen to be here, like in the Maui example, there's big ranches on the east, right in the east side above HCMS. We're like, we're not going to partner with you for grass-fed beef there. We're going to partner with you around the Pali, right up as you start to go over the windward side, past Pa'i and over to Hana, because that's where the water is going to be. That's where the rain is now. We're not forcing a model into the wrong place. I think that was the mistake in the last century. We didn't see the world the way we see the world now. We saw the world as infinitely abundant and under our control, as opposed to something we work in harmony with. So we forced large plantation crops in areas where, frankly, that's not where that plant belonged. It belonged somewhere else. And that's why it was so resource intensive. All right. Well, thank you guys for having me here. It's great to be here. I want everyone to know my brother as well, $10 inspiration and organic.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing in the ocean and what we're doing to protect marine resources. My job is the administrator of the Division of Aquatic Resources. So I'm going to focus mostly on what's going on in West Hawaii, but I thought I'd mention a few things that are happening elsewhere in the state, particularly as it relates to coral bleaching. We all wring our hands about what to do about it, and truly there isn't a whole lot we're going to be able to do here in Hawaii about climate change, at least in the near future, the way things are going right now. But the best we can do is try to make sure that we're anticipating problems and trying to make everything work as well as it can, given increasing temperatures, ocean temperatures, and sea level rise, and all the things that are going along with that. And of course, it is impacting our fishery, but perhaps no more so than as it relates to our coral reefs. The bleaching events in 2014 and 15 killed almost 50% of the corals here. We're trying to do everything we can. We talk about, not stepping on corals, not using, sunscreens with oxybenzone in them. And the truth is there's a lot of stuff happening that's just almost out of our control, except that we can help to make our reefs more resilient and help them recover. And that's really where our focus has been. So I'm going to talk a little about that, and I have a PowerPoint to go along with that. And then perhaps we can talk about other fisheries management issues, but I wanted to let you know about this plan. It started about a year ago, and it was specifically to address the bleaching events we've had. But let me make very clear, we're going to see more of these. I've heard this year we have, because of the La Nina impacts, we're going to not see bleaching probably as much as we did those 2 years, but they're going to happen again, and it's probably going to be worse. And we need to be sure we're doing whatever we can to address those issues. This is, for those who haven't been in the water and seen what it looks like, this is what the coral looks like when it's bleached. But you can see all the cauliflower coral are bleached, and some of the finger coral are also bleached. Here's this one coral. It's probably 500-600 years old, and you can see it's half bleached. It's sad to see these corals in this condition. I think this one is in Ahupua'a Bay, actually, where many of you probably have seen some of these great big corals that are critical to the formation of our islands. This is what it looks like when algae gets growing over the coral. The brown is algae. Most of you know that when coral bleaches, it can recover, but if it doesn't recover and it dies, the first thing you see is algae growing on it. And often you'll see a brown patch of algae on top of a coral head, and that's basically a sign that the coral's dead and you're getting overgrowth of algae. This is you can see by the size of the diver, a large coral, and again, probably hundreds of years old. And this is what the reef looks like now. This is February 2016, but this is after 2 years of bleaching, and the coral dies and everything's dead. By the way, that photo is here, West Hawaii. So we put together a plan to try to address this issue and to try to promote coral recovery. Again, given that we're not going to do much about sea level temperature increases, we need to look at things that we can do to help the corals recover and to help them make them more resilient to future bleaching events. The project involved essentially 4 steps. The first step was to figure out what can we do? What do people do in places like Hawaii, Great Barrier Reef, and other places where they're having serious bleaching events? What's the role of government? What's the role of everyone else? Second step was to look at where we could make the most difference and pick priority areas. By the way, West Hawaii is one of those, primarily because we have such beautiful reefs here, and we were very vulnerable to bleaching, as was evident in the last couple of years. And then this third step was really to get good advice from scientists on bleaching and how to deal with it. And finally, after we looked at what we could do here in Hawaii, we wanted to determine, based on the best science available, what do you think would really work here in Hawaii versus elsewhere in the country. So I'm going to go through these steps pretty quickly here. And again, if you have questions as you go, just raise your hand. But first of all, with defining the role of the resource manager, there are essentially different things we can do. We can prevent additional damage to coral. Don't tromp on it. Don't physically damage it. Don't use sunscreens with oxybenzone in areas where water is restricted and they're likely to create problems. We can do things to try to control the overgrowth of algae. When algae grows over the coral, it keeps the coral polyps from settling on the hard surfaces, and algae control is critically important as you deal with a bleaching event. You can stimulate new coral to settle. The coral polyps settle and grow, and like seed, they'll grow if the conditions are good. So you need to be sure that that's happening. And finally, we actually have methods for replacing dead coral. We have a large coral nursery on Oahu. I'd love to get one going here on the Big Island, but we actually grow out coral, and we've been very successful in planting it out in small amounts and getting it to grow very quickly. One of the big problems in Hawaii is corals grow much more slowly here than they do in most places. Coral grow about 1 centimeter a year, so coral the size of a tennis ball is probably.
Is that due to heat or cold or what?
No, it's just the types of corals we have here. Yeah, in the Caribbean and other places, the corals grow much more quickly. It's just a different species of coral, and conditions are probably, of course, very conducive to the growth of coral in those areas. Our corals are actually adapted to a cooler water than some other corals, but as a result, they do grow very slowly. So it's particularly challenging to get our corals to grow in a nursery quickly and to get them to grow once we put them out. Going into a little more detail here, we have essentially coral-dominated reefs. We have bleaching events, and so as we look at how to prevent additional damage, we can reduce land-based pollution, fluid runoff, sediments, chemicals, golf courses and agriculture. If they're overused, get into the water and create nutrient loading problems. By the way, the nutrient loading doesn't impact the corals so much as it does stimulate the growth of algae on the corals, so that's important to know. Then of course we mentioned preventing physical damage. Even here in Hawaii, my wife and visitors around the beach now, and I'm sure they're probably crushing coral as they walk out. I'm a fly fisherman, and I have to admit I've stomped on lots of coral over the last few years. I try not to, but it happens, and particularly in places like Kanama Bay, where you get hundreds, thousands of people in the water every day, you're going to see that. And of course, overfishing has an impact, and I'll explain that a little later. But what we worry about more than catching papio and oeo and other species which are sport fish, we worry about people going out and taking the herbivores, basically parrotfish, which are so important in keeping the algae under control. And I'll go into more detail on that. Mentioning the herbivores, again, as we look at protecting herbivores, we think that's a very important strategy toward better managing our fisheries and the coral reefs. We can do it with two ways, basically. We can set up marine managed areas. Managed areas are areas that aren't entirely closed. We put a limit on the number of fish you could catch, or the size of the fish. The bigger the fish, the more algae it eats. Also, the more babies it produces. So it's important that you be careful about what size you're looking at. And of course, many of you know, or maybe some of you don't know, in most places here there's no bag limit on the number of fish you can take. You can catch as many, spear as many parrotfish as you can spear, and it's perfectly legal. That's not the case in most places. You can also, so you can close the area entirely, which was done at Kapoleu, for example, recently. The shoreline from Four Seasons down to Palamanui, which is close to Kiholo, is now essentially closed out to 10 fathoms. And then beyond that, restricted fishing is allowed, but mostly that's closed. That would be an example of a closed area, protected area. And then of course, as I mentioned, there are ways of controlling the taking of herbivores by limiting the size that can be caught or the number of fish that can be caught. And we're working on rules to do that right now. And then what happens is the herbivores, these are surgeon fish and parrotfish, they eat the algae, creating a blank surface, a denuded surface, where the corals can sit. Parrotfish we call excavators or scrapers, and it's really important that you understand that they not only eat dead coral, by the way. They don't eat live coral. And you see, pooping out coral, fan basically. What they're doing is they're eating the dead coral and digesting the algae in the dead coral. So they're good. I mean, although they're eating coral, they're eating dead coral, which is fine. And then they're leaving a surface where the new coral polyps can settle and grow. So they do two things. They get rid of the algae and they create a new substrate for the coral to grow. So of all the fish out there, those are the ones you want to protect, and that's been shown throughout the world to be the case. One thing we are doing though is we are cultivating sea urchins. Sea urchins are also herbivores. They basically munch away at algae. That's what they eat. So these little spiny sea urchins, we have, in addition to growing corals, we're growing the sea urchins. Hundreds of thousands of them. You could do that in El here very easily. Big Island abalone, actually abalone and sea urchins are very, very similar in how they are grown, and what they eat. They both eat algae. They could be a nice place for a nursery for urchins, which we could put out, and hopefully they could help keep things under control. The next step was to find areas that we really should focus on. I mean, Hawaii has a huge coastline, so we can't do everything everywhere. So we identified some areas, first of all, which had high bleaching rates during those 2014-2015 events. Of course, this is everything from Polar Point down to South Point here, where we had bleaching, and up in this area, High and Torquay. Again, bleaching actually was over 80%, and fortunately much of that, the corals recovered, but we still lost 50% of the coral in this overall in the West Hawaii area, which is, that's a lot. Maui, same thing. We had large amount of bleaching in the leeward side of Maui. On Oahu, almost all the windward side of Oahu, and fortunately, Kauai, at least in 2015, didn't have any bleaching. So these were areas which are identified as priority areas, and again, I'm pleased that all of West Hawaii is determined as a priority area. So whatever we're doing, we're gonna focus a lot of attention here. On leeward Maui, we actually have some herbivore management areas already established, and we haven't done much, surprisingly, at Kaneohe Bay, given the fact that you got so many scientists working from there. But we are out planting sea urchins and sucking off algae from the reefs. We have a device called a super sucker. It's basically a great big vacuum cleaner, and we go out and we suck off the algae that grows there that has been covering the reefs, and then we plant out the sea urchins, and they munch down the algae and keep everything under control. They're doing a terrific job. The problem there is the urchins aren't reproducing, and we don't know why. I think it's because of a lot of fresh water that flows into the harbor, to the bay, but scientists really haven't figured that out. And until we can get those urchins to reproduce, it's not sustainable. We can't keep producing sea urchins forever, so that's a challenge. One of the things we did is we said, okay, let's see what other people are doing that's successful, and surprisingly, we're actually at a kind of a cutting edge. Most people aren't doing anything except wringing their hands and watching what happens. But there are some scientists that are trying to do something. We surveyed scientists from all over the world, 174 coral bleaching experts. There are a lot of people out there who've published lots of papers on coral bleaching, but very few who have tried to do something about it. Anyway, we asked them all about what they're doing, and actually had put together a list of 22 different management actions that we found in the literature that might be possible, and asked them to rank those in terms of importance or how they felt how effective they would be in their particular areas. Now, let me emphasize that we asked them to rank the management actions based on how ecologically effective they could be, not considering what the politics are or anything else. For example, with sediment you'll see is identified as one of the big stressors for reefs, runoff, sediment, and by the way, nutrients and other chemicals. But I tell you, after many years of working in this field, dealing with polluted runoff is very, very difficult and expensive. So you're talking long-term management practices to improve watersheds and do things that are important, but it's not a quick fix, and it's very, very expensive to do. So we got all these ideas from these guys, and sure enough, the 5 most effective actions that they came up with were to reduce polluted runoff, basically sediments and nutrients. Also establish, interestingly, more enforcement of just the existing rules. They said would go a long way in wherever area they were. By the way, most of these people were from the US or Australia. And then establishing no-take marine protected areas would be effective, and what we call the herbivore fishery management areas, where we're basically focusing on herbivores, the parrotfish, the urchins, and other things, was also determined to be most effective. Again, this is worldwide. So we had a workshop then here on, it's actually on Oahu, and we brought in 44 scientists from DAR, where I work, NOAA, UH, Institute of Marine Biology, TNC, and CI has some really good scientists working with them. And they said, okay, these are the things they're doing worldwide. What can we do in Hawaii, given our situation, that would be most effective, given all the options we have and what's working well elsewhere? We're different than the Great Barrier Reef, and we're different than other places, so what could we do? Well, here's the list that they came up with for Hawaii. And that is, again, this is a 2-day workshop. One was to establish no-take marine protected areas, basically close the area. Let me say, politically, that's very hard to do too. it's much better, easier for us to limit the fish that can be taken than it is to close the area entirely. Believe me, we saw that at Kapolei. Reducing sediment nutrients, of course, is also important, but again, as I mentioned earlier, very difficult to do in a short period of time. Enhanced marine enforcement. By the way, we have a new vessel here. DoCare has a new boat, and hopefully have some staff to do more patrols and things out offshore here. So we're hoping that marine enforcement unit will be helpful, but clearly in most parts of the state, more enforcement is necessary. Most fishermen, if will want to do the right thing, if they know what the right thing is to do. There are some out there who don't care, but that's rare. But I think education is going to be a huge part of this. I mean, and if we're going to be starting to look at banning parrotfish taking in any way, shape, or form, we're going to need to understand why that's important. And we haven't done a good job of that. I mean, your questions are the same I'm getting. Well, I didn't know that, and it's almost, and I didn't either, frankly, until a few years ago. Really understand the what's important. And I think most people are on the same boat. We do have a program called Makai Watch, which is an attempt to try to help the enforcement side. Again, as it relates to education, much of what they do is let people know what's pono, what can you do, what you shouldn't be doing, and by the way, these are the rules. So at Ahupua'a, for example, they do have a pretty active Makai Watch program. I believe at Kapolei, Four Seasons area, they're trying to develop that. And it's an observer program, an education program primarily. And we can actually, if you're interested, I can get you in touch with the head of the Makai Watch program. It's actually run out of DoCare, the Division of Conservation Enforcement. But it's sort of their eyes and ears out there. They can't take enforcement action. They shouldn't even try. I mean, you don't want a citizen going out and citing someone. Believe me, that's not something. You need a lot of training on how to do that, and a uniform and a gun. But there's a lot you can do in a friendly way that I think would go a long way toward helping people understand what the implications are. And if you do find the bad actor, noting down the information that the DoCare officer needs to be able to take an enforcement case. So yeah, there's lots of stuff that we need to work on, and hopefully we can make some progress. Money is an issue. I hate to say it, but it's not the only. It's not the only thing we need to do. I think there's a lot we can do with what we have, and I found community groups really willing to step up and do it.
So welcome back, everybody, to our Earth Day Fair, April 22nd, 2017. I started on the issue of the Kealikehe wastewater about 20 years ago when I found out that water was being dumped in a temporary sewage pit right above Honokohau Harbor, and that's my driving passion for some reason, and ended up having annual environmental conferences, and Rick Gaffney from Pacific Boat and Yachts, who's been there for about 30 years, at the harbor, has been someone who has worked with me, alongside with me, trying to work with the county to take care of our wastewater issues. We are now getting traction after all this time, and they say, even Bruce Anderson, who was Department of Health for 20 years, said it's just a huge and costly issue. It's very difficult to deal with, but we have to take care of our wastewater and stopping it from going into the ocean.
Well, let me start here. It's Earth Day. Earth Day started in 1970 when I graduated from college. It's been an initiative of the people for many, many years that's a lot of years, to educate the general public about Earth-based issues. I'd also like to remind everybody today's the day for the March on Science, and there's people all over the world trying to get politicians and climate deniers and those people who think that science is fake to recognize that science is important. While I said I'm not a scientist, my degree is a Bachelor of Science, in political science, which is an interesting twist because, of course, most people with a political science degree have a Bachelor of Arts, but that's because I took a lot of science when I was in school. I also got a fellowship a few years back in marine science journalism at the University of Rhode Island Graduate School of Oceanography. So it's not that I'm not an active scientist, but I know a bit about science. So I'd like to start this discussion today by pointing out that we here in West Hawaii are in the midst of a wastewater crisis. 1.7 million gallons per day of basically treated sewage water is currently being dumped into a lava tube that is just Mauka of the Queen Kaahumanu Highway, just north of the police station. So you probably haven't seen this, but if you want to walk in, you can. There's a roadway just Makai of the police station. Right as you go into the transfer station, there's a locked gate on your left. You can walk around it. You can walk in and see this. That's 1.7 million gallons per day of basically treated sewage that's being dumped into an open lava tube. When I first moved to Kona in the early 70s, we were pre-cesspool. We were building outhouses at that time. But cesspools, outhouses, and frankly even septic tanks are essentially doing what we're doing here with all of the collected wastewater on this coastline. We're dumping it into a hole. Why that's important is, by the way, I should recognize Chip Hunt from the U.S. Geological Service created this PowerPoint. I'm just borrowing it today. Here's an aerial that shows why dumping is a problem. So we've got this disposal pit right here, and this is the police station here. So, and this is Honokahau Harbor down here. Now there's 3 million gallons per day of groundwater, and that's the water that's coming down from Wololai and moving through the land and going into the ocean. That's the blue arrows here along the coastline. And that groundwater is actually passing through the place where that disposal pit is. And with that, this says 1.5 million gallons per day. That's back when this slideshow was made. It's actually more today. So the point here is that Honokahau Harbor was built at the lowest point on the coastline because it's cheaper to dig a hole in solid lava at the lowest point of the coastline than it would be to do it someplace where it's higher. And a lot of people don't realize how low Honokahau Harbor is, but I'm in a 2-story office building at Honokahau, and when the biggest cruise ships that ever come to Kona are in Kailua Bay, I can't see them from the 2nd floor of my office. That's how low Honokahau is. So this is a graphic example that I think is important. You notice that this increasingly darker gray area, that indicates what the geology underneath that part of the coastline looks like. So it's essentially a funnel. It's going downhill. That's why all of the fresh water that's coming down and the wastewater that's coming from that disposal pit ends up coming down into Honokahau Harbor. The end result of this is when Honokahau was built in the early 70s, the water directly offshore was rated Class AA. That's the best rating for water clarity and quality in the state. It's now rated as impaired. So it's gone downhill quite a bit since then, and it's going to get worse until we solve the problem of wastewater. This is an example of one of many studies that's available on the subject. If you look into wastewater problems on the Kona coast, if you Google that, you will find many studies on the subject. This one, which includes input by Bill Walsh from our Department of Aquatic Resources, looks at coral-dominated places on the coastline and determines talks about the impacts of pollution on those areas. One of the reasons that process stopped years ago is that the primary user of that R1 water is going to be the new regional park, which is basically supposed to fill all of the area. That's one of the reasons that that pipe comes across from the plant and dumps into that lava tube, because that's where that regional park was supposed to be located. Well, the regional park died. Regional park's not happening. So there is, even when they get this R1 water available, they don't have users for it. So a couple of the things that are underway with regard to that are the Queen K widening has included sewage pipes going toward the sewage treatment plant from Kohanaiki and reuse lines coming back from the wastewater treatment plant to Kohanaiki. Kohanaiki development is willing to buy R1 water from the county and use it to water their landscaping and golf courses. But there's a problem. Just like there's a problem with our having a regional park necessary to use all this R1 water, the pipes are only being installed to Kealakahe Parkway. There's another mile that has to be installed from Kealakahe Parkway to the wastewater treatment plant, or number one, we don't get any of the sewage coming across from Kohanaiki and the harbor and all, Costco, the light industrial area there and so forth. None of that water is going to be able to make it to the plant until that last mile of pipe goes in. And likewise, none of the R1 water is going to be able to come back from the plant to where it can be used. The other night, Bill Kucharski, who's the head of the Department of Environmental Management, pointed out that the cost to install piping in Kona because of the lava is $2 million a mile. And that's what they're choking on right now. They can't find that $2 million to do that last mile. So all of this stuff sounds good, but the fact is that we can't currently connect so that we have an opportunity to use this water somewhere else. There are a number of other places that sewage is making it into our coastal waters. And those of you that were here for Bruce's talk noted that pollutants, nitrites, and also, or nitrogen, and also particulate matter are two of the most important things that are damaging our reefs on this coast. So we are pumping that 1.5 million gallons per day into that hole, and that's spreading off the coastline at Honokahau. The national park's not happy about it because their offshore waters are polluted. And there's a bigger issue here too. Ocean recreation tourism is the #1 source it's the #1 supporter of our tourism industry statewide. When the Kona Inn was built in 1927, it was built because sport fishermen had started coming to Kona in 1916 because of the quality of the fishing here. But one of the reasons the fishing here is so good is that blue marlin spawn in our waters year-round. There's a young PhD student who got his PhD here studying juvenile blue marlin, and he could go out any day of the week, year-round, and get blue marlin that were 3 days old or less. Well, that means that they didn't swim in here from somewhere else. That means they were born here. And if we have juvenile fish, depending on the water quality offshore, and we damage that water quality to the point that those juvenile fish can't live, we kill the goose that laid the golden egg. We kill an industry that started here in 1916 and is still going strong because of management measures that that industry has imposed on itself. When I first fished in Kona in the late 60s, any blue marlin that took a hook died. You brought it to the pier, you hung it by its tail, dead fish. Today, something like 70% of the blue marlin hooked on this coast are tagged and released. That's something the industry did to assure its future. But the industry has no future if we start to kill those 1, 2, and 3 day blue marlin that are in the nearshore waters, moving in the current streams that move up and down the coast. That's just one example. Every one of the reef fish that people come to see when they snorkel, all are potentially damaged by damage to our reefs. A lot of those fish require corals, and as Bruce pointed out, we have a problem that we really don't have any control over because it's an international problem, and that's coral bleaching. So But if we're doing additional damage and not allowing juvenile fish to be able to live long enough to become the fish that our tourists want to see, we lose that industry as well. Manta rays, you know, we're 150,000 people a year coming to Kona to see our manta rays now. They're coming here specifically to see manta rays. If we pollute our nearshore waters to the point that manta rays can't breed here, we lose that industry as well. If the dolphins that people have come here to see are coming back from their feeding forays at night with new cookie cutter shark bites on their sides and they enter polluted waters, they're going to get diseases. And if you swim with our dolphins, you will occasionally see that they're festering, their cookie cutter shark bites are actually festering. So we have many, many reasons to be sure that we're not polluting our nearshore waters. So I talked about the dumping of those waters into that lava tube and why that's a problem, but that's an area-specific problem. I think it's a solvable one. Money would be a big help. But beyond that, we have the highest per capita number of cesspools on this island of any other island in the state. People are still using cesspools in low-lying areas like Puako and along Elite Drive, and those cesspools are leaching directly into the water. The closest technology to that, which people are now, if you build a house now, you have to use a septic tank. A septic tank is like maybe 1% better than a cesspool. It really doesn't add much to the technology. So we really need to go to the point where we're collecting water and cleaning it up and redistributing it because we don't have enough freshwater resources and because we can't continue to dump it in the ocean like we do today. Other issues with regard to pollution on our coast, the coastal sewage systems, and there are not many of them, but there's one that runs down Elite Drive, are clearly leaking. And the reason we know that is that the water that comes into the wastewater treatment plant has a high salinity level. So it's basically those pipes, as the water moves through the pipes, they create a suction. And if there's a joint leak or a crack in the pipe or any other way that water can get in, saltwater literally gets sucked into the pipe. Well, obviously, if water can get into the pipe, it can also get out of the pipe. If the pipe's pressurized, there's going to be more pollutants coming out of the sewer pipe. And then it's just as bad as, well, it's not just as bad, but it's like a leaking cesspool. We're getting more pollution in the water. There are other forms of pollution, other kind of absurdities around pollution. Currently, there is no way to pump out the holding tank on a boat on the Kona coast. It's crazy. It's even crazier when you understand that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will pay 100% of the cost of installing a sewage pump-out facility. So, many years ago, we convinced the Division of Boating and Ocean Recreation that they ought to get some of this grant money and put in a sewage pump-out facility. So they did. They put it on the Kailua Pier. And they expected that all the boaters in Honokahau, the 250 boats that are based in Honokahau, would drive to the Kailua Pier. But then they made it even more complicated. They kept the hose at Honokahau. So you had to take your boat to the Kailua Pier, then you had to take a truck to get the hose to bring it back to the Kailua Pier. Nobody except the few boats that are on moorings in Kailua Bay benefited from that installation. So about 5 years ago, we went back to DOBOR and we said, we really want a sewage pump-out facility at Honokahau. And they got the grant instantly. Fish and Wildlife Service didn't hesitate. 100% of the cost. Sent the money. DOBOR sat on it for 4 years. Now they've installed the unit, the vacuum unit, to pump out boats on the fuel dock. So if you pull in to get fuel, you can also pump out your sewage tank. Good thing, great. They haven't hooked up the vacuum unit to the storage tank. And there's no hose there either. So we're about 5 years from when we convinced DOBOR that they ought to take advantage of free money to stop the pollution from the boats on the Kona coast. So I think I sound a little frustrated right now. I am. Other points of pollution, fish are illegally cut. and thrown into the water at Honokaha. Probably very minor, and I think our tiger shark population is very happy with that. There are also at Honokaha injection wells, a cesspool, a septic tank, and most of those are old enough now that they're failing, and in some cases parts are no longer available for the equipment, and so this stuff is breaking down and it's causing problems. And again, we have this issue with now we have a sewage pipe that stops at Keahi Parkway and doesn't go any further. We've been assured by the boating division, although that doesn't mean much to me, because I've been chasing them for years, but we've been assured by the boating division that as soon as that pipe is connected, they will use it, and they will collect all the sewage at Honokaha. And mind you, that's a fair amount. I mean, they're essentially 250 small businesses that work out of Honokaha. So, and for a long time, I don't know that this is still true, but the Harbor House restaurant was the largest single distributor of beer on this island. And if you've ever been to the Harbor House, you know why. They serve beer in these like fish bowls that it takes 2 hands to hold up. But just think about where that's going. I've got a good news, bad news scenario that I think I'll close with. The good news is that our County Department of Environmental Management now has an engineer in charge. That seems so simple, but we had an attorney in charge for a long, long time. And we got a lot of good rules written, and we got a lot of lawsuits taken care of and so forth. But we didn't get a lot of good engineering done. And Bill Kaczarski, who's the new head of Department of Environmental Management, I just met him for the first time the other night at the community forum, but he seems to be dedicated to doing everything he can to fix the problem. His current timeline is that by April of 2020, the wastewater treatment plant will be fully functional and it will be distributing R1 water to those places that he can get it to. And currently that is the old airport park and the proposed regional park, which is across from the wastewater treatment plant. So as citizens, I think one of the things we need to do, not just because we need another good park, but because we need to get this R1 water used in proper ways, is to really push for that regional park. It's going to be good for the community that's all around the area. It's going to be really good for the distribution of that water. So the good news is that we have an engineer in the Department of Environmental Management now. We also have some very dedicated council people who are very committed to this issue. Miley David and Karen Eoff were here earlier. They're both they keep up to speed on this issue and they're doing everything that they can. There also is an environmental commission now, and there are some very knowledgeable, very good people on that commission that are asking very hard questions. So I think there's hope, at least at the county level. The bad news, in my mind, or one of the aspects of the bad news is it's not just about the county. The county is responsible to handle the sewage, but they're overseen by the State Department of Health. And the State Department of Health is managing Environmental Protection Agency rules. So there's actually 3 levels of government involved here. They don't often talk to themselves. And today's the March for Science Day, and I want to make the point, the EPA has gone over to the dark side. It has completely gone over to the dark side. So the support that we need from that agency, at least for these 4 years, is probably going to be going downhill and not going to be a lot of help. So that's the bad news. And the bottom line to that is pretty simple. The county can't afford to do all of this upgrade and essentially the right thing without adequate support from the state. And as Bruce mentioned earlier, he was with the Department of Health for a very long time, and he knows that they're underfunded and undermanned. And that's been an ongoing issue here. And of course, federal financial assistance, maybe this will be part of President Trump's infrastructure development, maybe not. So, but without those two other, the state and the federal levels being supportive, the county and the rest of us are going to be in deep doo-doo. So with that, I will answer any questions.
I am at the Natural Energy Lab of Hawaii Authority, that's what NELHA stands for, and I'm at Friends of NELHA. So Friends of NELHA is a small nonprofit. NELHA is a huge organization, it's a state authority. It's made up of almost 50 different tenants. A lot of people don't know that. It's people producing products, people doing research and development, people doing both, people working on conservation and education. And so that's where we fall. So I support the mission of NELHA, but I support the mission, services, products, and messaging of all of the other tenants. And so as Friends of NELHA, we try to help those different tenants in any way that we can, whether it's advertising or marketing or getting, having people come, drawing more attention to their products or getting their message out there on our social media, and doing tours. So I do tours throughout the week, Monday through Friday, every day at 10 a.m. If you're interested in them, we do have a website, friendsofnelha.org, and we do have an online platform to register online easily, with a credit card. If you can't register for that day, it's because it's locked, because it's probably sold out. So I do host a lot of large groups of students from all over the world, so colleges, universities, junior highs, high schools from all over the world, and then a lot of schools here in Hawaii on this island, and then statewide. I really like that the Natural Energy Lab is utilizing two of the greatest resources that we have, sunlight and seawater, but doing it in a modern way. And so, and addressing those issues of energy independence and also food security. And they really get to hands-on, they get to see science in action, and that's what I think is really fun about NELHA. You have all these people doing research, you have all these people with these great ideas, and maybe they won't work, maybe they will, maybe they've already worked and they're still there, but it's all so exciting because it's showing science inquiry in the process. And then kids, especially young kids, start to think up things, and it's really fun when we're at Mackay Ocean Engineering at the OTEC facility when I have fourth graders posing questions to the engineers about, well, did you try this? Did you try that? I think that's really funny because clearly it's an engineer and they probably did, but having a fourth grader ask you about it is probably kind of fun. So they also get to see that science is attainable. So, we go someplace like that, the engineer walks out, he's got slippers and board shorts on, his sunglasses, there's no pocket protector, there's no lab coat, not that that's a bad thing, but I think that kids in general, they see science as unattainable for them. I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, it's scary, and it's not scary, so. And then educating about the general history of NELHA. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions within the community about NELHA and what goes on there. And so addressing that is really important. And showcasing these pioneering technologies is really a lot of fun. And when people walk away, especially kids, I want them to have a sense of hope. There are people thinking up things. There are people thinking up solutions. And there just might be hope. It might be okay. And what can I do, too? It inspires them as well. So awareness regarding issues about sustainability and ocean science and technology. And like I said before, food security, that was an issue that we talked about earlier. Solving real world problems with innovation, but these applications that are just so simple. And a place for place-based education and inquiry-based education and learning, and a message of hope for the future. So some of these pictures are from WEA, West Hawaii Explorations Academy. The kids are outside. One of their students crocheted an entire strip of coral reef and showed the progression of coral reef bleaching. That's just a perfect example of STEM with the addition of the arts, STEAM. So it's just such great stuff happening there. And education continued. When you educate the community about these issues, you are addressing these issues, then you might actually be changing people's perception And that can affect voting power and investments in innovative technologies and possible donations for some of these researchers, a change in behavior and actions. That's what we're always trying to do, just like Bruce was talking about with respecting parrotfish. You know, people just don't know. Educate them and then see what happens. And education in business. So business-wise, you know, the origination of NELHA was because of economic development. It was to spur economic development and provide a space for entrepreneurs and to provide research support. And that is so important, because how can you figure something out if you don't have the space to try? And science is about trial and error. And sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. And that's really important for children to learn as well, but also a great space for adults. And so that's what's happening here at NELHA. And everybody's using the sunlight or the seawater or both to do something. And we have a lot of businesses there. Some of you might not be aware that there's over 600 jobs on the NELHA campus. It accounts for $80 million impact within the state. Over 60% of the shrimp broodstock for the entire world comes from Hawaii. A significant portion of that comes just from NELHA, from 2 different companies. Bruce was talking about earlier with the clam and oyster spat. We have the young clams and oysters that size of a grain of sand are coming here. Kona Coast shellfish and Taylor shellfish are growing those animals out with that great clean water and the winterless life cycle to that size of about a thumbnail, and then shipping them back to farmers to seed their beds. Hugely important. It's kind of a mitigation against climate change and ocean acidification. So really important niches that we fill here. Tourism, you know, it's kind of the core of what goes on here on the island and all the islands. And, you know, we're meshing science and technology with tourism. People want to know what's happening. People come and want to go on a tour because they are interested. And I think that in itself is hopeful, that there are people from all over the world that want to know what other people are doing, and they're not just scientists and engineers. I do get quite a few of those, drag their families to the tours. But it's not just them, it's all these other totally normal people. Debatable, but you know, whatever, totally normal. Who's really normal? So, but it's hopeful, you know, because people are interested. They want to know what's happening. And it puts us in a position here to be leaders for, you know, the rest of the world, and innovation and science and technology as it relates to the ocean and our resources that we have here. It's kind of like that natural progression from the ancient to the more modern, and using those resources and using what we have and in the best way that we can in a responsible way. Oh, we're hosting the Ocean Energy and Economic Development Symposium and Workshop in June 23rd and 24th. And that's also kind of, and it's a dual purpose kind of a thing. We're bringing a delegation from Kumajima here in Okinawa, and it's the only other place in the world where there is a functioning OTEC facility, an ocean thermal energy conversion facility. So we have a 100 kilowatt per hour facility. They have a 50 kilowatt per hour facility. We have 2 sets of pipelines, 3 each, and they have 1 set, 1 each. So it's a little bit smaller, Deep Sea Water Research Center, but they do, it's very similar to NELHA. They support some related technologies like sustainable aquaculture. They also have a deep sea water spa, which we definitely need here. Don't you think? It's a really good idea. We have a lot of similarities, and we are also sister city with Kumajima. So Hawaii County and Kumajima, that is our sister city. Not a lot of people know that, but so we went there last year. We host it every other year. They host it every other year. So they will be coming to NELHA in June, and yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else?
Thank you very much.